Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome the members of council, staff, and members of the public to our June 13th council meeting and call this meeting to order. At this time, I'd like to ask Mrs. Pearson, Clerk Operations Clerk, to read the disclaimer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. And that is that council members, staff, guests, and members of the public are advised that the Council of the Town of Petrolia meetings are video and audio recorded and will be posted on the Town of Petrolia's YouTube, along with the official written minutes on our website. As such, comments and opinions expressed may be published, and any comments expressed by individual council members, guests, and the public are their own and do not represent the opinions or comments of the Town of Petrolia as a whole and or the Council of the Town of Petrolia. The recorded video of the full council meeting is not considered the official record of that meeting. The official record of the council meeting shall consist solely of the minutes approved by the Council of the Town of Petrolia.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. And at this time, I'd like to ask Mrs. Pearson for the roll call, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Dighton.
Present.
Councillor Field.
Present.
Councillor O'Hara.
Present.
Councillor Purdy.
Present.
Councillor Such.
Present.
Councillor Welton.
Present.
Mayor Loosely.
Present.
And we have a quorum, Your Worship.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask council to declare a conflict of interest or pecuniary interest, to declare it now or at the appropriate time and give the necessary paperwork to the Clerk Operations Clerk. I would like to declare a conflict of interest on agenda item number 10A, the Integrity Commissioner's final report, due to the fact that is regarding my code of conduct complaint, and I will not take part on the vote, and the necessary paperwork has been given to the Clerk Operations Clerk. At this time, I'd like a motion to adopt the agenda before you. I'll ask for a move and a second to put it on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Dighton, seconded by Councillor Field. Any discussion regarding the adoption of the agenda before you? If not, all those in favor of approving that? Opposed? That motion carries. Next on the agenda is the minutes of our regular council meeting held on May the 24th, 2022. I'll ask for a motion to put that on the floor for discussion. Moved by Councillor Such, seconded by Councillor Purdy. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to adopt as circulated minutes of the regular meeting of council held on May 24th, 2022.
Thank you. Any errors or omissions? Any discussion from council? If not, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of approving those minutes? Opposed? That motion carries. We also have the minutes of an information meeting regarding Third Mutual Kentel Reconstruction on the 24th of May. I'll ask for a motion to put that on the floor for discussion. Moved by Councillor O'Hara, seconded by Councillor Field. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to receive as information notes of the public information session dated May 24th, 2022.
Any discussion from council? Okay, if not, all those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. That brings us to our inspirational message. And I'd like to call upon Councillor Such to provide that for us tonight, please. Councillor Such, go ahead.
A good coach can change a game. A great coach can change a life.
Thank you, Councillor Such. That'll bring us now to the council round table announcements. And we start at the beginning again with Councillor Dighton, please. Thank you. Councillor O'Hara. Thank you. Councillor Such. Councillor Purdy.
Nothing this time.
Thank you. Councillor Field.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I just want to congratulate the community services, Dave Menzies, Larissa, and Tara and their team for Pizza Fest. It was an amazing event, as always, and it was so nice to see people out and about. There was a lot of positive comments for people to be back out. I think they did a great, they had a great day, and there was a lot of pizza eaten. So I did have 2 burgers as well.
Thank you, Councillor Field. And it was a great event. I was there as well. We had a great crowd, great turnout. I will also speak to that in my roundtable as well. Councillor Welton.
Yes, Your Worship. I was at the Pizza Fest too. I got run over by people. What a turnout.
It was great. Thank you, Councillor Welton. I have a few items I'd like to just share with everyone. I attended Mayor Lonnie Napper's 80th birthday celebration at the Plimpton, Wyoming Municipal Office on behalf of the staff and council, and presented a card and a gift on Wednesday, May the 25th. Councilor Ross O'Hara also attended. The event was well attended and it was a good time by everyone. Councilor Marty Such and I attended and toured the Oil Museum reopening celebrations in Oil Springs on Friday, May 27th. And it was again a good turnout with a number of dignitaries who cut the ribbon. I also attended the grand opening of the Petrolia Farmers Market on Saturday, May 28th at 9 a.m. I welcome everyone on behalf of council and stated that the market was a great gathering place in the heart of Petrolia, and how fortunate we are to have so many fresh local food products available. It was my pleasure to declare the Petrolia Farmers Market officially open for the 2022 season. I attended the Royal Canadian Legion Branch 216 in Petrolia for their 90th anniversary and presented a certificate to the branch and a certificate to the Ladies Auxiliary on behalf of the council and staff of the town of Petrolia on Sunday, May 29th, and it was also a great event. I also attended the CEE Hospital Boutique Opening Day on Monday, May 20th, and I'd like to recommend that council go and see the variety of items for sale if they have not already done so. I met with Hillcrest Public School Grade 1 that included 19 children for a short municipal tour of the municipal office and council chambers on Tuesday, May 31st. Gifts were handed out to each student. Special thanks to Mrs. Katie Bailey, their teacher, Mrs. Larissa Ellsworth, Director of Marketing, Arts and Communication, and all those involved with the tour. I attended a county council meeting on Wednesday, June the 1st, and as usual, we'll keep council informed. Congratulations to the staff, sponsors, service clubs, pizza owners that took part, volunteers, and all others involved with the Pizza Fest on Saturday, June the 4th. It was a great success with large crowds and the pizza was great. It was so good to see the people back out to enjoy the outdoors, as Councillor Field already stated. My wife Wendy and I enjoyed the Elite Star Dance Academy recital that presented a wish come true at the YMCA on June the 5th. Special thanks and congratulations to Lynette, Alice, and Grace for their invitation and producing a great performance to a full house. I attended the Nickel Scholarship meeting on Tuesday, June the 7th at the high school to review the applications and select the winners for 2022. Mr. Michael and Karen Hall from Florida also attended. Congratulations in no specific order to Miss Jacqueline Jackson, Miss Megan Jakes, Miss Emma Patchett, Mr. Keenan Reedhead, Mr. Trevor Sire, and Miss Jada Welch. And as council is aware, that is $10,000 US as a scholarship for their future education. I also attended the next day the Nickel reception at the high school on Wednesday, June the 8th to congratulate the winners and meet the parents. I also was invited and attended the Lambton College convocation ceremony on Wednesday, June the 8th. That was a success to a large crowd and a number of individuals graduating. I dropped in to say hello to the seniors picnic. I hate to say that I am a senior, sponsored by the Lions Club and Lions Hall on Wednesday, June the 8th. I thank and congratulate the club on putting on this event. That's all I have this time. Moving on, we have item number 8 is correspondence for information. I'd like to ask for a mover and a second to put that motion on the floor for discussion. And if there's any council that wishes to pull something out separately, we will. So moved by Councilor O'Hara, seconded by Councilor Dighton, that we receive items A to E, and I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the council of the town of Petrolia to receive and file correspondence items 9A through E.
Any discussion regarding those items? If not, all those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. In regards to consideration for correspondence and a motion, there are none tonight. That brings us to delegations and presentations. We have a Miss Perigodova who is with us from Airden Billis regarding the conduct of the complaint report. And I'd like to ask her to come forward, please.
evening, everyone.
And Ms. Paragodova, I think your microphone just might be off.
Tall person problem. I have to say, I wish I was a little bit later on the agenda because of, first of all, the nice long drive, but also because you have a beautiful town here. It's my first time in town, so I wish I could enjoy it a little bit more, but I'll just be with you for a brief time tonight. So as Mayor loosely indicated, I'm here on behalf of Airden Burles and Mr. Mascaron, who is the primary integrity commissioner appointed on behalf of Airden Burles to present report on Code of Conduct Complaint 2022-01 that was filed on January 6th. And as his worship indicated, it was filed against himself on January 6th, as I said. The complaint primarily alleged that the mayor contravened Article 5, subsection 10 of the code, as well as the Municipal Act and unspecified in-camera rules following a closed session meeting of council on December 13th, 2021. And more specifically, the complaint alleged that the mayor disclosed certain confidential information to the Independent, as was reflected in an article dated December 17th, 2021. Slightly more specifically, it was alleged that the article contained direct quotes from the mayor, and those quotes are directly cited in the article, and that those quotes contain certain bits of confidential information which disclose details from a confidential report, which council will be aware of. It's called the Fleming Report. And that in the article, certain information was provided, which in fact had not been disclosed as part of a public summary of that same report, which was released to the public on November 25th. The complaint went into a little bit more detail and alleged that this disclosure was allegedly intentional and a blatant, I'm quoting now, a blatant breach of trust and ethical standards, and that it undermined the reputation and professional integrity of not only the mayor's position, but more broadly the town. So we have conducted a very thorough investigation into this complaint. And of course, you've seen our report, which was provided alongside your agenda materials. I don't propose to take you through the entire report tonight in detail because we may be here for quite some time. However, I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that any council members may have on the report, if I can assist you with clarifying anything that's contained. There are a few details which I would like to bring to council's attention, which is customary when we make certain findings and to help you interpret the report and to receive our recommendations. The first of the facts that I wanted to mention is that we were made aware of a long-standing history concerning the leaking of confidential in-camera information to the media, and in particular, the Independent, the circumstances of which did not involve the mayor. That's the way that it was presented to us. So this is summarized at paragraph 20 of our report. And the reason why I mention is because it made the circumstances of this complaint slightly more complicated, because of course there was these related facts that were brought to our attention. The other piece of the puzzle, so to speak, that made the investigation slightly more complicated was that there was expressed concern by a number of parties that we spoke to regarding the quality and accuracy of reporting from the Independent, and in particular, the author of the article. This also complicated the investigation at hand and required a little bit more probing, so to speak. As is custom in every investigation, the mayor was provided an opportunity to respond as the respondent to the complaint, and he did so. In fact, the mayor was unequivocal that it was his sincere belief that he did not disclose or release any confidential information. He provided some detail, which I'm summarizing now, but indicated that during the interview, he was quite pressured to disclose information pertaining to the Fleming report and the full scope of that report, and that perhaps his words had been to some degree twisted and misquoted. So we were provided with that response. We were made aware that there was an audio recording of the particular interview, which gave rise to these quotes in the article. And of course, in being as thorough as possible, we did request a copy of this audio recording of the interview. And we did make it clear that the audio recording would be a very important and perhaps the best piece of evidence that we could possibly get with respect to this investigation. The recording was ultimately not disclosed. That request was refused. We summarize in some detail in our report at paragraphs 26 to 29 why we did not proceed with a court order to compel the production of this recording. We speak to that specifically, but of course it would have significantly delayed not only our investigation in this report, but it would have amounted to significant costs, which we did not feel were proportional for the purposes of our investigation. Our analysis ultimately, which I would draw council's particular attention to, is found at paragraphs 30 to 44 of the report. Our operative finding is at paragraphs 42 and 43, in which we state that we find on a balance of probabilities that the mayor committed at most an inadvertent breach of Article 5, Sections 10, as well as 12 of the code. We did not conclude that the mayor acted maliciously, committed a blatant breach of trust or ethical standards, which is the language the complaint had used, or had acted to undermine the reputation or professional integrity of his position or the town. With all that in mind, the primary purpose of our presentation as Integrity Commissioner tonight is, in the primary role of council, having read our report and having heard my summary, is to consider and vote on the proposed recommendations specifically. And I will say that the recommendations are just that. They are recommendations. Council is not obligated to adopt them. They're there for your consideration. And as a last bit of information, I'll say that Mayor Loosely, as a respondent in the complaint, will have a chance to address council should he so wish on the recommendations piece specifically. He has had an opportunity as a respondent to provide feedback on the factual findings to us directly, and we've considered his response carefully. And that is very standard in a complaint process like this, and certainly standard where there is a finding of even a minor or inadvertent breach, that the respondent would have had an opportunity to provide his feedback. However, he is able to speak to council on the recommendation portion tonight. Of course, you will have read that having regard to the totality of our findings, and taking into account that there has been no prior history of contraventions or complaints under the code of conduct against the mayor, we did not find that a penalty or reprimand is appropriate or warranted. And as such, we have not recommended that council take those steps. We did caution expressly in our report, not only the mayor, but all members of council to remain steadfast in observing the rules regarding confidentiality, as certainly there can be more serious contraventions, and breaches of those rules can warrant significant consequences in some cases. But aside from that, I am happy to answer any questions you may have, and after which the recommendations are with council to vote on.
Thank you for that report. I think what I'd like to do is I can speak to the recommendations only, and I will declare. I accept the recommendations outlined in the final report. And I'm saying that at this time, I will like to declare a conflict of interest. And I will call upon Councillor Purdy, the acting mayor, to take the chair, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Ms. Pergadova, I'd like to thank you for that report. I did read it, very detailed and very objective. And on behalf of council, I want to thank you for that. And I'll open it up if any council has any questions before. Go ahead, Councilor Baton.
Thank you, Your Worship, or acting worship. I'm not sure how to address that actually. So from reading through the report and reading through the findings on this, basically is that if there was a breach in this point in time, which was really not really clear if there even was a breach, it was maybe a slight of sort, but it seems to be under a lot of duress as well. Is this something we should even, we shouldn't even deal with this? Is this even something that you would go forward with even putting in a report? We shouldn't act on it, for one, in my opinion, but also two, Is there any, like, do we even have to adapt this?
So the Integrity Commissioner's role very much contemplates that we do an initial assessment of any complaint, and where we don't find that it warrants any type of investigation, we are able to effectively do away with the complaint at the outset by taking a variety of steps. For example, we could have simply responded to the complainant and informed the mayor that the complaint had been received and that we weren't taking steps to investigate. In this case, and this is why I brought up some of those factual complexities of the situation, it wasn't black and white enough for us to not have conducted further inquiry. In fact, it would have been inappropriate for us to not conduct further inquiry. Sometimes factual circumstances lead to effectively a process of elimination and a balance of probabilities. In the absence of the recording, it was impossible to include 100%. However, the other possibilities we considered were less likely than what we found ultimately to have happened, which is perhaps an inadvertent and minor breach of disclosure. Like you said, under some circumstances that while we didn't call them duress, we called it pressure and perhaps persistent questioning. So to answer your question, Counselor, my submission would be that it was appropriate for us to investigate given the circumstances, and ultimately it's up to council what they would like to do with our recommendations, which you've heard.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Vickman. Anyone else? Councilor Such?
The question that I have is the fact that the timing of this complaint come in, and the fact that this is an election year. My opinion is this may be motivated to a political deal. Is it possible that the complainant be brought forward because of the timing with the election year coming in? I feel it could have a possibility of trying to taint the mayor's position of rerunning. Can the person's name be brought forward under special circumstances?
There is very specific circumstances in which we would have jurisdiction to disclose the party's name. It is very much our practice to maintain the confidentiality of parties. We did not find that this complaint was vexatious, which is certainly within our jurisdiction to find. Had we done so, perhaps the sequence of events following would be slightly different, and my answer to you tonight might be different. We did not find that. In fact, we did find there to be an investigation that flowed from that. So I certainly can't speak fully to the unknown intentions of the party bringing the complaint forward, but I will just point out to council that we did not, when we conducted our preliminary review, find this to be vexatious on its face, purely based on the information, the substantive information we received in support of the complaint. As motives go, that is impossible for us to speculate. Certainly it was not part of the complaint. Otherwise, we would have disclosed that to council.
Anyone else? Councilor Field?
Thank you. And I agree. The report is very thorough. In section 12, you list the review of materials and interviews. I guess I just have one question. You listed a number of reports you went through and different people. Were any members of council interviewed? It doesn't mention anybody from council. I guess, other than possibly.
We did not warrant the, we did not find that it warranted any interviews with members of council.
Okay. Can I ask one more question?
Yep.
And not looking to analyze how you did your, was the first interview with the independent, was that a first interview? Was that near the end? Was it like right off the bat? Did that create more of the need for additional?
I'm the only reason I'm speculative to answer is that it doesn't really form whether, you know, the order of interviews is what we typically determine to be in the best interest of a thorough and proper and fulsome investigation. Did you want to provide some context for that question?
No, just more if the tape had come out at the very beginning and it was very clear. I'm just wondering if the rest of this investigation would have continued. I can't speculate. I don't know what was on the tape. So
No, I think I understand your question, Counselor. So first of all, the interviews were conducted within quite a short amount of time. So
Okay.
it was not a matter of the audio not being disclosed because of the timing of our interview with the independent. So
Okay.
that was never in question. I'll also add that the fact that it wasn't provided, the reason wasn't timing. It was purely because it is not, we were told that it was not consistent with the independent's practice and the reporter's practice in question to disclose recordings absent a court order to do so. So I don't think it would have impacted
Okay.
whether we interviewed them 2 weeks earlier. At
Right.
least certainly that wasn't their position.
Thank you.
Counselor Dayton?
Well, if you don't mind, you mentioned earlier that this is your first time to town, so you actually didn't come to town to do the physical interviews.
It was not necessary.
Excellent.
We were able to conduct our interviews over the phone and on video as necessary. In the absence of absolute necessity of in-person interviews at a time of COVID, it's slightly complicated and perhaps even irresponsible to force an in-person meeting, not to mention the expense of myself coming from Toronto to conduct the same meeting that can happen over the phone. Rest assured that if we felt that it was necessary to improve the thoroughness of our investigation, we would always take that step. In this case, we did not determine it to be necessary.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Counselor Dayton, actually, it's a segue into my question. So since there were no physical presence of your organization here until this point, there's a couple things I kind of wanted to bring to your attention for some context. Quite a few days prior to us even knowing about anything, former mayor on his Facebook post heard the integrity commissioner was in town. Now that's interesting. Liked by several people, including one running for mayor. And is it proper for a Petrolia town councillor to sit in the morning at a school crossing every day and watch elementary children? Bit concerned, this is weird.
Can I,
Basically accusing somebody on council.
As a point of
being
order.
pedophile.
I don't think that has anything
Well, it has context, absolutely has context.
to this report. I don't believe so.
It does. It shows there's a concerted effort here to try and tarnish certain people's reputations on this council. Well, it's all part of the context.
I'm not sure if there was a question there, Councillor Purdy.
Yeah, I just want to provide some context as to what Councillor Such said, that there does seem to be the circumstances, the timing, some social media posts, that kind of thing.
Okay, thank you for your comments.
Okay. So basically, everything was confidential then. So like a certain member couldn't receive that information to put something on a post that is supposed to be confidential.
I'm sorry, Councillor, you're gonna have to clarify your question,
No,
please.
So the former mayor in posting that the integrity commissioner was in town. So how would he be, like, would that be something privy to be leaked out to somebody in a situation like that? Like,
I apologize that we're presented with with evidence in support of the complaint. We do a thorough investigation that we determine to be relevant. I'm not sure if I can speculate on intentions or what's possible and not. In fact, I
Right.
think it would be quite irresponsible of me to do that because we've made findings on facts that we have received. So I appreciate your bringing it to my attention for context, but it did not form part of this report. So
okay,
I'm
I
not
just
sure I can
wondered if
address it
maybe there
fully.
was a breach or a leak of information to Mr. Charles. If there could have been somehow a leak, because everything is confidential, all the witnesses, everything that you do is held under strict confidence, correct?
In terms of the process of our
Yes.
investigation, absolutely.
Okay, that's, I guess, what I was referring to is, could, it potentially be something that leaked out to somebody then?
It's entirely
Okay,
possible. And in
okay.
fact, we were made aware that the Independent had published an article concerning our investigation. I believe there was one more recently too, because our investigation was delayed. Unfortunately, I was quite ill with
Okay.
COVID, go figure. But there was a couple of articles that mentioned the fact that we were investigating absent specific information as to how that
Okay.
information is provided, I
Okay.
can't possibly speculate, but it would
Okay.
seem that members of the media are aware that there was an investigation taking place, and that's the best information I can give you.
Okay. We're only allowed to take council comments at this time? Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Pergadova. Want to thank you again on behalf of council for your report, and just want to advise you that you do not have to stay for the remainder of the meeting. We know you have a long drive ahead.
Thank you,
So
Council.
thank you very much.
My pleasure. It's customary typically that I would stay for the vote, if that's all right with you, and then I'll excuse myself, but thank you very much.
You're welcome. Yeah, so we have a motion on the floor. So we have a motion on the floor. Okay. Read it. Okay. That the council of the town of, okay, sorry, I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Welton, seconded by Councillor Such. And it reads that the council of the town of Petrolia receive and file with no further action the Integrity Commissioner report prepared by Airden Berlis dated June 10th, 2022. And the council thanks Ms. Pergadova for her time in preparation of a fair report. All those in favor? Oh, sorry, discussion? I'm new to this. Councillor Such? Yes.
I would support that. Solely that I think that information that come out of the articles of the discussion that happened. Already been stated in the paper, so.
Okay, perfect. So we are ready for the recorded vote. And just as a reminder, the answers are for or against when speaking for your vote. For is in support of the motion, against is not in favor of the motion. We do have a conflict of interest declared by Mayor Loosely, so he is not recorded as this vote. And in accordance with our procedures, the mover will vote second last, and the mayor, in this case, Councillor Purdy as the acting mayor, will vote last. And then from there, we are in alphabetical order. Councillor Dighton, for or against? Yeah, yes, Councillor, your clarification question.
If we go for this, it's to put it into record. If we're going against this, it squashes the report and it goes, that's it, it's done. Or it goes back to,
No, so there is nothing against the report. It's the recommendation of any further action from the report, and there is no further action. So it's a receive and file recommendation.
thank you very much. And I'm for.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Field,
For.
Councillor O'Hara.
Or
I almost said Councillor Purdy. I apologize. Councillor Welton,
Or
Councillor Such,
or
and Acting Mayor Purdy.
For.
So that is all in support, Your Worship. The motion does carry.
Thank you. Call Mayor Loosely back.
The next item on the agenda is the community announcements, recognitions, and awards. And we have a motion on the floor. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to put that on the floor for discussion, please. Moved by Councillor Dayton, seconded by Councillor O'Hara. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
Thank you. And that is for the council of the town of Petrolia to receive as information only the June 13th, 2022 community announcements as presented.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Mrs. Ellsworth, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Nothing at this time, your worship. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Not, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. That brings us to the first opportunity for public to address council. The first one we have listed is Mr. Norm Sutherland. Mr. Sutherland, if you'd like to come forward, please.
My discussion pertains to your last report. Is that okay with council? Mr. Sutherland?
Do you have her on here? Oh, I think Mr. Sutherland needs to go first.
Oh.
He's first listed here, and then you can certainly have the opportunity. Okay, go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Heather Wright. I live at 435 Greenfield Street in Petrolia for the past 16 years and own the independent serving Petroleum in Central Langton. I'd like to address the conclusions of the code of conduct and express my disappointment that while all members of council saw me standing, asking to speak to the matter, no one mentioned that. The essence of the complaint was the mayor was releasing information that was only available to those with access to confidential information in a staff councilor conflict. A statement released to the media by the town about the conflict once the investigator John Fleming's report was complete did not give names of the staff nor the councilor involved. Those facts I knew because of a conversation I had with the councilor involved months before the investigation began. So when the town bylaw was presented about a fire chief's title changing a month later, after the report had been released, I asked the mayor a simple question. And I'm reading here directly from the transcript of the recorded conversation. I said, quote, "I wonder if you could explain something for me. I noticed that in one of the bylaws that Jay Arns is, his title has changed to the Director of Public Services. What's that about?" The mayor's answer, again, verbatim from that recording was, quote, "Well, if you go back to that report that was done by Mr. Fleming, and he recommended that the fire chief's job description had been cleaned up, excuse me. Until that moment, no one in the town, nor the independent, I might add, had named the fire chief as one of those involved in this conflict." The mayor's recollection of this interview paints a picture of the independent, which is a little more than unflattering, but frankly, very typical, I find. A dishonest journalist badgering a public official to say something they didn't wish to say. And I came today to tell you that is not the case. The writer of the report says, according to the mayor, the reported questions quickly turned, quote, to learning more information about the public summary, and that the reporter continued to pressure him over and over to provide further information regarding that investigation conducted by Mr. Fleming and the full scope of the report, which she was not happy, quote, to not have been given. Here are the facts. The mayor and I had a conversation that was 16 minutes and 45 seconds long on December the 14th. We talked about several subjects, including the budget and water rates, the leave of absence of a counselor, the town putting its meetings on YouTube, a community wellness grant the town was applying for, and for 2 minutes and 55 seconds, the mayor and I talked about this bylaw. Not once in that conversation did I raise the issue, the full scope of the Fleming report. Not once. The mayor is quoted as saying I'd used tricked questions instead of regular questions. So here are the so-called trick questions. Quote, "So what will the benefit of him being the Director of Public Services as opposed to the Director of Protective Services be? I don't understand that." Unquote. And quote, "I am sorry, I just want to make sure I understand this. So then the bylaw enforcement part of his job has now been removed, unquote. And finally, so what was the thought process there, Brad? That perhaps with the way his job description was worded, he felt empowered to take action in the situation, unquote. The mayor told the investigator that the article appeared so quickly, it must have been written before I spoke to him. Well, I've been working in the media for 35 years now and put out 2 newspapers in 2 communities every week. I'd better be quick by now. And by the way, quick does not mean automatically sloppy. It can mean the writer is experienced and knowledgeable and able to work quickly on a deadline, all skills sought after in the news media industry. The writer of the report drew her conclusions that the mayor's comments were no more than an inadvertent breach, quote, based on 3 things. 1, the mayor's portrayal of how the interview proceeded, which I certainly would not characterize as tricky. 2, the fact that every person the writer encountered at staff at town hall, quote, expressed concern about the quality and accuracy of the reporting from the Independent and the reporter in particular. Specifically, it was indicated that the articles often misparaphrased, exaggerated, or stated incorrect facts and details and targeted certain individuals. Thank you. And that the town staff, that the Independent rather, painted the town staff in a negative and inaccurate light. And, quote, at the worst, the reporting was compared to a tabloid. This too is disappointing to hear, but frankly not unexpected, considering some of the controversies at town hall in the past 5 years involving the very people the investigator questioned. And 3, the writer of the report also inferred there was something wrong with the Independent refusing to release my notes and audio. The investigator was, quote, forced to consider whether a reporter either intentionally or unintentionally misquoted the mayor, she wrote. Adding it would be, quote, difficult to conceptualize a reporter engaging in such a serious breach of journalistic ethics, unquote. And then later she said, quote, we are surprised and forced to draw at least some adverse inference about the fact that the reporter did not share the audio recording with us. Let me be crystal clear here, gentlemen. It is common practice and best practice in the journalism profession to refuse requests to give copies of investigative work product to police, judicial, and quasi-judicial bodies. It's kind of like client-attorney privilege, or in the municipal world, it's kind of like in-camera meetings. It's not done. I interview all kinds of people, including whistleblowers. And if I willingly turn over my notes to authorities, how can those sources have any confidence I will protect them when they could lose their jobs by talking to me? The shorter answer here is I can't. Supreme Court cases have been fought on this issue. I can think of all but one that was decided in favor of journalists. I think the writer of this report, a lawyer, might have mentioned that. There was another way to hear this information. It is my understanding that it was the investigator's job to ask questions. The writer of this report did not ask me what questions I had asked the mayor, how long the conversation had lasted, or if I had expressed any displeasure about the conversation, about the Fleming report not being released. In short, she didn't tell me the mayor had blamed the media. I'm left to conclude the investigator, during the course of the conversation we had, decided there must be something to the mayor's comments because the journalist failed to simply hand over her notes. So the investigator stopped asking questions that might have given more accurate pictures of what actually happened here. The failure of the investigator to ask those questions puts the media on trial instead of answering this very simple question about the mayor's conduct in this matter. When I said to the mayor on December 14th, I noticed in one of the bylaws that Jane Arns, his title has changed to Director of Public Services. What is that about? Why did he simply not say, I can't comment on that. It's a personnel issue. I have the privilege of reporting on all kinds of municipal councils. I usually sit quietly when community leaders malign their local papers, kind of a local sport, particularly when they're facing difficult questions. That's usually. Today, publicly and in this report, my business, which is reporting on this community and whose sole currency is the truth written as accurately as possible, has been damaged by this report because based on the report's findings, it appears the mayor inaccurately portrayed what happened and then blamed the media. And now it's public record. Do I report difficult stories that politicians would rather I not? Absolutely. Do I ask tough questions? Absolutely, that's the job. Do I place the town in a negative light? Sometimes, yes. It's called accountability. And that's what journalism is about and what my readers expect. And the Independent has been recognized again and again, both provincially and across Canada, for its high journalistic standards and the quality of its reporting. I'd also suggest that the characterization of the Independent as a newspaper which only shows Petrolia in a bad light is demonstrably false. The Independent is the only media outlet that actually comes to this town, is in this town, and reports what happens here. All the summer events organized by town staff, grants given out, grants received, honors given to long-serving town staff members. And the Independent works to make Petrolia a better place by giving local charities a hand up with free or low-cost ads. I've foregone my own income to work cooperatively with the town to promote local businesses, most recently during COVID, even as the newspaper industry struggles. The information, which I would call misleading, and the characterization of the newspaper as tabloid journalism in this report damages the paper's reputation and publicly damages my integrity as a journalist in a way that I could no longer sit in the council chambers and let the blame the media narrative continue. If a report came to town council maligning another local business, my guess is the town would find a document from a lawyer on the desk claiming slander. I make mistakes. I'm willing to admit my mistakes. When the town calls and points out an error in a story, there is a correction. I did not make a mistake here. The mayor told the Integrity Commission he would admit when he is wrong. After this presentation, and after I post the audio of the interview online this evening, I hope he will be true to his word. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Would you like to give that presentation to Larissa, if you like? Okay, thank you. Mr. Sutherland, if you'd like to come forward, please.
Your worship, members of council. I'm Norm Sutherland, 385 Egan Ave, Petrolia. The subject for my discussion tonight is development charges. At council, November 8, 2021 regular council meeting under item 18A, it was moved by Joel Field, seconded by Don Welton. And I quote, "The council of the town of Petrolia defer to incoming council the proposal for BM Ross to undertake development charge study, and that the project expense of $27,500 plus HST be approved." I have read the BM Ross 27-page report dated November 8, 2021, and it's entitled Development Charges 101. It is a very clear and understandable report. Now, as a side note, I did not think that a present council can approve of a financial charge for a future council. I believe that the town of Petrolia has some 7 new subdivision projects at various stages of approval. This would approximate 700 building lots. This will result in a great amount of expense to the taxpayers of Petrolia in order to provide the additional services to accommodate this very considerable expansion of the town. Without development charges being in place, we are going to miss the boat. I would respectfully ask 2 questions and hopefully receive a response this evening, since I submitted this address to council some 2 weeks ago. Number 1, why was the BM Ross report deferred to a future council? Why can't we proceed now? And secondly, I noticed that Valentina Street is being completely rebuilt to service a new housing development on this street. Are the developers paying the cost of this reconstruction? And if not, why? So hopefully there'll be some answers to those questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sutherland. Does council have anything? Councillor Field.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Sutherland, I just want to clarify, I did make a motion, and it was seconded by Don, that the council of the town of Petrolia, the word defer was added in. That was an amendment to it. My motion was that the council of the town of Petrolia undertake a development study for the upcoming year. We found out in an education session that it's about a 1-year process that we need to enlist BM Ross or enlist somebody to do, and that it would take 1 year to do it. So it would come to a new council, but my recommendation was that we do it to find out what we don't know. And I wasn't 100% convinced of development fees, but I felt that this study would do that. So that's my original motion, was to bring that forward, except that we pay for that and that we do it and then we hand it to a new council. The amendment that was made to it was to defer it to the next council for their consideration. I voted against that. So I just want to clarify, my original motion was to do the study and to get the information that we don't have. And it takes 1 year to do it. The study takes 1 year. And they would hand the information to the council of the day once completed, but that was turned down. Just as my own opinion of Valentina approaches a development. None of the houses on Valentina were part of that development. So the same way any subdivision goes in, if the street's done before it or after it, it has nothing to do with that street. That's from the TAC committee. We did have that on the plans to have Valentina corrected and fixed. And it was a deteriorating street. And I think that's why it was moved up, but that's just my opinion. So thank you.
That is very clear, because I read the previous motion that you made. So my question is, why was it deferred? I haven't got an answer to that.
Because there's an amendment made. The amendment.
But why was the amendment made?
You have to ask I voted against it.
Council, any other questions for Mr. Sutherland? It just was a decision at the time, Mr. Sutherland. The council has the option to consider a reconsideration, and there is a format that they could go through, but that will be up to this council. And there is a process that I can have Mrs. Pearson explain if council wishes. The first thing would be a motion to reconsider. If there's nothing else, Thank you,
Well,
Mr. Sullivan, for coming.
If I may comment, I would hope there'll be a motion because it takes a year. Personally, I'm an engineer, so I know a little bit about it. I'm a bit surprised it takes a year. That's one thing. But a year or not, why can't it be done now? And secondly, as I mentioned, I can't see how you can burden a future council with a charge. That's just a side note.
Okay. Counselor Field?
That charge was going to be paid by this council if it was accepted. We're not deferring the cost to a new council. The way it was amended and changed was deferring. So yes, it would be their decision, and it was to be their decision in the future. There was no cost because that undertaking never happened. So we weren't deferring or telling the next council. They would have to make their own decisions, basically the end.
I appreciate your answers, but I'm more confused than ever. And really, I hope that this is reconsidered right away and so we can move on. Because as a taxpayer, there's a lot of expense going to be involved until we have development charges. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sutherland. Is there any other issues from council? If not, we'll move on. Is there anyone else wishing to address council?
My name is Larry Highfield, live at 385 North Ridge, there for the last 13 years. Have a real problem in this town. Part of it should be shared with fellow councilors. First, I just got 2 or 3 questions. Your Worship, I want to ask you.
Okay.
I was one of 3 residents or taxpayers that was accused a year ago for following and harassing town employees. Do you recall that?
I recall that was a police issue at the time. I don't think the town was involved with you whatsoever.
Okay. And my name was brought up again. It was the 3rd time I've had the OPP investigate me. And my family's getting sick of it. And they come in the door and there's no true facts at all to their investigation. One investigation, undercover officer followed me for 20-some days. They lived a very exciting life. Continue on. The last one was the one that pushed me over the edge. Can't take it any longer. Something's got to be done. You people up there, the people that can do it. Mr. Mayor, I'm asking you, do you know the person who put my name to my truck in the flats saying I was following and harassing the town employees approximately a year ago? Do you know who put my name to my truck? Because I talked to the OPP officer and I have all the information from all the investigations. And I figure it's fair to go right to you, get the information from you. Can you tell me, please?
I don't know if I personally know your involvement on this. I think the involvement was maybe with the counselor, but I don't think we were involved with any private individuals. And that's my understanding, unless council can correct me if I'm wrong. Your issue is with the police. I
No, the
believe.
police was, my investigation is through the town employee that made an accusation to somebody that I was following, harassing them. That's why they come to my house to follow me for 20-some days.
I'm certainly sorry you had to go through all that, but our involvement is with staff and with council. I'm not aware of the police or involving your name through this council.
So you're telling me you're not aware that I was involved with 2 other taxpayers regarding harassing and following town employees? The police didn't notify the town about that?
Yes, the police did notify your names that you were involved with it, but it was not the town that instigated your name that I'm aware of. But yes, I was aware that there was you and another individual named.
No, there's 3 town residents. The last police investigation.
Okay.
You aware of that?
Not off the top of my head. I know there's you and one other employee that I'm aware of. I think it's still, you need to talk to the OPP regarding this. Certainly the town,
I'm sorry?
you need to talk to the OPP regarding all of this and whatever information they have.
I did. They come to my house and had told me that I was involved following and harassing town employees, and he did an investigation. There's no such thing. And I asked him who put my name to the truck. So I'm asking you, Your Worship, who put my name to the truck?
I'm not aware of who put your name to the truck for you. I know there were other individuals involved regarding staff and counselors.
You're not aware there's another taxpayer, another person in this town involved?
There, I do know the name of one other individual I remember that was listed with the one counselor.
Okay.
Unless there's anything else council has. I think this is an OPP police issue.
Oh. Can I ask another person a question? Your Worship?
Sure, go ahead.
Mr. Charleboy,
Certainly.
is it your responsibility to be in charge of all the town employees?
Correct.
Are you aware who put my name to my truck when the police investigated it?
No, like the mayor has said several times, this
No,
is the
I'm asking you
OPP.
the question.
I am not.
You're not aware of it?
No,
Are you the person to report criminal matters to the OPP?
depends on the situation. Anybody can report criminal matters to the
That's right.
OPP.
Some time ago in council, I asked you who punished the employees, and you stated you did until it come to a criminal matter and you contacted the OPP. You recall saying that?
Not really, but sure, that sounds fair. Is this an OPP investigation right now, Larry? Or I don't understand all
I'm
this.
sorry?
Is this an OPP investigation right now? I don't understand why all the questions.
Why all the questions?
Yeah.
Just want some answers. Am I not entitled to some answers? When
Yes,
somebody makes false harassing statements, 3 police investigations, and none of them are true. And the investigator, I just sit tight. I don't like to cause trouble. I've sat tight for 4 or 5 years. Some of the old previous council knows what happened 4 or 5 years ago. And I'm just trying to get to the bottom of this now. And you, along with the mayor, says you're not aware of who put my name to the truck.
I've never read any OPP investigation. It's up to the
Nah.
OPP to decide who they investigate.
Can I ask one more question?
One more, that should be enough. Go ahead.
Want to ask Mr. Arms?
No, you address it through the chair. You address it through me. If you want to speak to staff. Go ahead if you want to ask a
You
question.
talking to me?
No, I'm talking through the chair. You're interrogating people.
No, I'm just asking a question.
Well, as a point of order, I don't feel that staff should be put into this
No.
case where they're asked questions.
So
like
you don't
that.
want to?
This is not a court of law,
Your
and
worship, you don't want to answer no more questions?
I will hear your question, but it's not to be directed towards the fire chief. If you have something to say to me, go ahead.
Well, I can tell the council, 3 police investigations, being harassed, taking pictures, following, harassing town employees. And when you're followed for 20-some days and there's no truth to it, and the last one, my name was put to a vehicle, now all of a sudden, nobody knows anything about it. And I know the OPP do, but I didn't want to go any farther. I thought we could settle it right here, but if you're forcing me to go farther, not a problem. I'm just saying that.
Okay.
You people don't want to answer the questions? And I guess Mr. Fields feels I'm interrogating you by asking a question, just yes or no.
I think some of this is going back even to the previous council. Is that, like, when you talked 4 or 5 years ago, this
No, I
council?
just asked you questions about a year ago.
Okay,
Thank you very much for your
okay,
time.
thank you. Anyone else wishing to address council? Okay, seeing none, we will move on. We have the financial accounts. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to put that motion on the floor for discussion, please. Need a move by Councillor O'Hara, seconded by Councillor Fields. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the council of the town of Petrolia to receive as information only, the May 10th, 2022 to May 31, 2022 financial accounts as circulated.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. Mr. O'Hara, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I don't.
Okay. Any discussion from council regarding those accounts? If not, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Those opposed? That motion carries. That brings us to the finance. We have a report from Mr. Rick Charlebois, CAO Treasurer, regarding the grant summary. And I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the council of the town of Petrolia to receive and file the report of the CAO treasurer dated the 13th of June, 2022 regarding an updated grant summary.
Before I open it up to council, I'd like to thank Mr. Charlebois for that report. That's great news when we look at that kind of money, or $13 million that we've received so far in grants this year is great news.
And I apologize, your worship. Did we have a mover and a seconder on that motion?
Yes, we did. Oh, did we? If not, I'll ask for one. Sorry, can I get a mover? Mover Councillor Fields, seconded by Councillor Dighton. And the motion was already read. Any discussion regarding that? Mr. Charlebois, do you have anything you would like to add?
No, your worship.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of approving that motion, opposed, that motion carries. That takes us to operations. Report from Mr. Mike Thompson, Director of Operations regarding sports equipment on streets. There's a motion before you. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to put that on the floor for discussion, please. Moved by Councillor Purdy, seconded by Councillor Welton. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion.
And that is for the council of the town of Petrolia to receive the report of the Director of Operations dated June 13th, 2022 regarding sports equipment on streets, and that staff be provided direction to include wording related to sports equipment on streets into a bylaw.
Any discussion from council? Mr. Thompson, do you have anything you would like to add? Thank you. Okay, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. Moving on to administration, we have a report from Mr. Ken Melanson, RPP Manager for the County of Lambton regarding the site plan delegation. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion and also inform council that that bylaw is on for our consideration later. So I'll get a motion to put that on the floor first, please. Moved by Councillor Fields, seconded by Councillor Welton. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for Petrolia Council to receive this report for information, and that bylaw 26 of 2022 be read a first and second time, and that bylaw 26 of 2022 be read a third time and finally passed. And that is recommendation. That is not the reading of the bylaw.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Pearson. Mr. Melanson, go ahead.
Good evening, your worship, members of council. Ken Melanson from the County of Lambton's Planning Department. I'll keep it brief. Sent the rest of the team home, so I'll be here with you until you deal with the bylaw. In essence, this bylaw comes, the origin of this is from Bill 109, which was passed by the province, which amended the Planning Act. One of the outcomes of that decision of the province was that they have mandated that site plan decisions on the drawings have to be delegated to staff no later than effective July 1st. So you need to have that delegation done before then. Hence why we have a bylaw in front of you. I want to take a moment to just give kudos to Maria Cosarosi from our team, who's been working primarily with Plimpton, Wyoming, but really sort of dealing with this issue for the county, because obviously all of our municipalities will have to put a delegation bylaw in place. What we're recommending before you tonight is that you not only delegate the site plan drawing decision, but you could delegate the decision of the agreement that implements the site plan as well, which is what's built into the bylaw. I'll preface it by saying that you are not required to delegate the agreement. We had asked the province for clarity on just how far the delegation decision was. We haven't received clarification back from them. So if council wishes to retain the site plan agreement decision, then when the bylaw comes before you, I'm happy to steer you through that process so that you would retain it. There's a simple amendment that you'll need to do. But we wanted to be cautious since we hadn't received any clarity back from the province and just recommend that the whole thing go forward. In essence, what this will mean is that staff who are with the town of Petroleum will be the signing authority. Nothing changes in terms of the technical review. Our staff will continue to work with your staff to review. It simply will be that council will no longer be making the decision as a result of it. So hopefully the report's pretty clear. I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Yes, and we do have all that information in front of us. Does the council have any questions for Mr. Melanson regarding this? And we will be dealing with the bylaw later on. Yes, Councillor Field.
Through your worship, what are other communities doing with this decision? Like the site plan has been something that does come to council for our, we understand what our taxpayers are looking for. I guess, to take that away, what are other communities looking at and doing? Or is it just so new that nobody else has made a decision?
So through your worship, a couple of things. One thing to keep in mind is that Bill 109 passed in April. So not just the county, but all municipalities in Ontario have very little time to react to the fact that they passed and gave royal assent to this change. That said, if you look at attachment 3 to the report, which is what I call the planning spectrum, which is basically an inverted triangle, you'll notice that the level of public engagement is very high at the outset when you're dealing with an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment. When you get down to the site plan, there is no public engagement. There's no mandate under the Planning Act that the public is involved. They have no right of appeal. Now, keep in mind, the bare minimum requirement of the act is no engagement whatsoever. So anything you do beyond that is extra. That's your choice. But there is no ability for the public to appeal. It is a very technical process. It's the last step just prior to a building permit to get a building basically on the ground. So from that perspective, I can see why the province is saying delegate, because really the only group that would be involved from a purely planning act perspective would be the town, our staff and your staff together as the town, as a corporation, and the applicant. Those are the only two parties that even have a right of appeal. Now, that said, I want to be clear, I'm not making any suggestions to council to change any of your processes that you have as a normal council. So the fact that you have these two opportunities for the public to come and speak, we're not suggesting you make any changes to that. All I'm saying is that the act has no mandate that you engage. Anything you do is sort of a bonus. But from the province's perspective, looking at that level of engagement, I can see why they delegate it. So hence the bylaw that's before you. I hope that answers your question.
No, that's good. I appreciate that. Does council have any other questions? If not, sorry. Go ahead.
Through your
Councillor Dyson.
worship,
Yeah.
so let me get my understanding or have me wrapped around this a little bit. I'm having trouble opening some of these slides and have for a couple of days now, so I'll paraphrase, but going forward, your recommendation is that it takes it away from council to, basically decide whether or not we put a subdivision forward or whether we plan together. There's nothing like that. It's just.
Sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's fine. I'm looking for some clarity here because it's looks like you're trying to take away something from council that would our constituents may be concerned about later on down the road. If we're just giving it to staff, then they lose that voice.
So if you could open attachment 3, which is the spectrum, that's very helpful, because one of the first things you'll notice on the left-hand side is I put very candidly the decider. of who deals with each one. So council is not losing anything in terms of official plan amendments, zoning bylaw amendments. That's a public hearing process that stays here. The only thing that the province is mandating be delegated to staff through Bill 109 is decisions related to site plans. So this is the technical drawing that would then facilitate a building permit to get a building on the ground. Nothing else beyond that at this point. Just keep in mind, we now are past the election. I don't know what's coming. But nothing at this point beyond that is changing. Does that answer your
That's
question?
fine. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from council for Mr. Melanson? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Melanson, for coming to clarify that.
I'll be happy to assist when you get to it.
Okay, thank you. We do have a motion, I believe, on the floor. Is everyone clear? And I know you'll be dealing with on the bylaws. Okay, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of the motion, opposed, that motion carries. That brings us to marketing, arts, and communications. We have a report from Mrs. Larissa Ellsworth, Director of Marketing, Arts, Communication, regarding contribution agreement with the Federal Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario Tourism Relief Fund. I'll ask for a move and a second to put that on the floor for discussion, please. Moved by Councillor Such, seconded by Councillor Field. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the council of the town of Petrolia to adopt the report of the Director of Marketing, Arts and Communication dated June 13th, 2022 regarding contribution agreements with the Federal Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario, the Tourism Relief Fund, and that the mayor and CAO sign a contribution agreement with the Federal Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario FedDev in regards to the Tourism Relief Fund, and that council endorsed the bylaw included with this council meeting this evening. And if I may, your worship, the motion, actually, it should say that the mayor and CAO are authorized to sign a contribution agreement. My apologies.
Okay, thank you for that correction. Again, that's $116,000. I think that's great news, and I want to thank Mrs. Ellsworth and her staff for pursuing that. And I'll open it up. Is there any questions from council? Okay, if not, all those in favor of approving that motion? Opposed, that motion carries. Thank you. We also have a report from Mrs. Larissa Ellsworth, Director of Marketing, Arts and Communication, regarding the Judith and Norman Alex Foundation grant to Victoria Playhouse Petrolia. You have a motion before you. I'll ask for a move and a second to put that on the floor for discussion, please. Moved by Councillor Dayton, seconded by Councillor Field. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the council of the town of Petrolia to receive and file the report of the Director of Marketing, Arts and Communications dated June 13th, 2022 regarding the Judith and Norman Alex Foundation grant to Victoria Playhouse Petrolia.
Thank you. And again, I want to thank Mrs. Ellsworth and staff for pursuing that. That's $35,000 that'll go towards having the elevator go to the balcony, which I think is great news. Any discussion from council? Mrs. Ellsworth, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Just our gratitude to the Alex Foundation for their support. Thank you, your worship.
Thank you. All right. Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of approving that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. We're going on. This is the second opportunity for individuals to address council. I'll ask, is there anyone here wishing to address council at this time? Seeing none, I'll go to new and unfinished business. We do have a tabled item regarding the OPP, and I think the request was for $5,000. This is the final opportunity to raise this from the table. We'll need a motion to lift it from the table before we discuss it. So I'll just ask for any direction from council. If not, we'll go on to the next item. Okay, the next item is just a notice of motion from myself. And and I'm not asking for any action tonight. It'll go to our next meeting, is the possibility of installing a rainbow crosswalk at Dufferin Avenue leading to LCCVI. And the intent is to ask the Board of Education to share that cost. The principal has already approved this, is certainly in favor of it, but this will just give the CAO action to take the next steps forward. So this will come forward as a motion at our next regular meeting of council. Is there anything else? Oh, sorry, Councillor Field. No, I think there's, no, we can certainly deal with it tonight. I believe, do we need a vote to do that? This, I think we, 2/3?
I can clarify. Yes,
Okay,
your worship. So
please,
we
go
would
ahead.
first need a motion to direct that it be brought forward, and that motion we need to carry by 2/3. Should that motion come forward, I would just ask for a few seconds of council to pull the document forward.
Okay, no problem. So I guess Councillor Field and the others are, if you're willing to deal with that tonight. Okay, so moved by Councillor Field, seconded by Councillor Dayton. And I believe the motion is to consider that action tonight. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mrs. Pearson, we will need a 2/3 vote to do that. So when I call the vote, okay, sorry, Councillor O'Hara.
Just a question. Just a question. I think there's something in there about cost sharing with the Board of Education. Have they agreed to this cost sharing or?
No, they have not. I've talked to the principal. He is requesting something from this council. This will give direction for the CAO to approach the Board of Education to see if they will share the cost. We are not doing this definitely at this time. We're just looking at the possibility of doing this. Oh, sorry, okay.
Currently, the motion is that the council of the town of Petrolia provide direction that the motion be brought forward and heard tonight. And that is the motion that we need 2/3 majority to carry, and then we can bring the motion forward.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're just going to vote on bringing this forward, and we need 2/3, so I will call the vote. All those in favor of bringing this forward? 2, 3. Opposed? That motion carries. Now,
This is where, your worship, I just need a slight break with council to bring forward the motion. So just one moment.
no problem.
I am ready, your worship, whenever that motion would like to be brought forward to the floor.
Okay, I think I'll ask you to read that motion first, and I'll ask for move and a seconder if that's okay, Mrs. Pearson.
Certainly. And that motion is whereas the council of the corporation of the town of Petrolia supports the town as an inclusive, accepting and welcoming community for all. And whereas the town of Petrolia is home to Lambton Central Collegiate and Vocational Institute, known as LCCVI, a post-secondary school with thousands of students attending from across rural Lambton. And whereas council believes that installation of a rainbow crosswalk on Dufferin Avenue leading to LCCVI will support all students accessing an environment of acceptance and inclusion. Now therefore be it resolved that in reflection of a desire in continuing to create an inclusive community, 1, a rainbow crosswalk be installed on Dufferin Avenue leading to LCCVI. 2, this initiative be proposed to LCCVI as a cost sharing between the Lambton Kent District School Board and the town of Petrolia. And 3, the installed crosswalk be in full compliance with road safety, including installation of proper pedestrian lights and safety features. Now therefore be it resolved that the council of the town of Petrolia direct the CAO to proceed in working with the principal of LCCVI and the operations department to achieve installation of a rainbow crosswalk on Dufferin Avenue leading to LCCVI.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. I think I'll get a motion first, then we can discuss that. I'll need a motion to put this on the floor. Moved by Councillor Fields, seconded by Councillor Dayton. Okay, any questions from council? Councillor O'Hara.
This is a crosswalk similar like we have right out the front doors here, right?
That's correct.
With the
Just-
lights and everything?
Yes,
What's the, we've never talked about cost. What's the cost for something like that?
I think I'll ask Mr. Thompson to give us an approximate cost, please. And we'd be responsible for half of that.
Well, we haven't negotiated for the other half yet.
No,
Yeah, anyway, I just find that I would like to have seen the school board on side before we decide that it's done. I'd like to make some an easy negotiation just to turn it down.
My understanding is I believe the principal basically wanted something from council to take to the Board of Education. Mr. Charlebois, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yes, your worship. We gladly bring this back to council once we have a possible arrangement with the school board all lined up. It being close to summer break, I'm not sure how quickly they'll be able to move, but hopefully by the fall at the latest, we'll have some sort of arrangement. We'll try and get it as early as possible, but we'll bring it back there.
I think that's important. So we will come back here for your final decision. Councillor Purdy.
Worship, have we determined, like, I know there are students that also reside in surrounding communities, like Enniskillen and Plimpton, Wyoming. Would it be possible to ask them for a proportional share to assist? And I think I probably know what the answer is, but I'm just asking.
No, I think, no, well, to answer your question, we certainly can ask, but I don't know how far that would go, but that's something we could do.
Your worship, we're experiencing some technical difficulties. If we can just postpone for one moment. Okay, we're back. Thank you, everybody. We apologize for the slight interruption.
Mr. Charlebois, go ahead.
Yes, your worship. Just to build on Councillor Purdy's comment there, we were going to look at Blue Water Power. They put these things in, and your point about it serving several other communities. I was going to raise that with them, and maybe we can get a better deal because it's supporting the surrounding. communities
Excellent
that
idea.
own
Thank you.
Blue Water Power. Oh, sorry. Just to build on Councillor Purdy's comment there about the surrounding communities, when I reach out to Blue Water Power, because they do this kind of work, putting in the electronic crosswalk, I'll mention that and see if we can get a better deal because it's supporting the surrounding community.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Charlebois. Is that okay? Any other questions from council? Okay. You did.
I
Okay,
have
is
read
there-
the motion, your worship. Yes.
Okay, we've got a motion on the floor. I'll call the vote. All those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. I'll now ask, is there any new or unfinished business? Councillor Dayton.
Worship, I sent something over to Ms. Pearson. I have a notice of motion here for a request of CAO to report and bring recommendations on the motion dated November 9th, 2020. Do you want me to read the whole motion or?
I apologize, Councillor Dayton, if I received that in advance of the agenda. I didn't,
You didn't get it in time. I was late getting it into you.
so I can include that notice of motion on the next council agenda.
That's fine. Yep.
Okay.
Is that okay, council? Okay. All right, is there anything else? Any unfinished business or new business from council? If not, we'll move on to the bylaws. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to approve the bylaws the first and second time. Councillor Field, seconded by Councillor Welton. Any discussion regarding the bylaws being read, or sorry, bylaws the first and second time? If not, all those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. And I'll ask for a motion to have the bylaws read a third time, signed, sealed, and numbered, moved by Councillor Purdy, seconded by Councillor Dayton. And I'll ask the clerk to read those bylaws, please.
Thank you, your worship. And that is for bylaw number 26, 2022, being a bylaw of the corporation of the town of Petrolia to delegate council's power under section 41 of the Planning Act 1991 as amended, part 13, be read a third time and finally passed. And that bylaw number 27 of 2022, being a bylaw of the corporation of the town of Petrolia to authorize an agreement between SEMA Plus Canada, Inc. and the town of Petrolia for professional engineering services intake, be read a third time and finally passed. That bylaw number 28 of 2022, being a bylaw of the Corporation of the Town of Petrolia to enter into an agreement with Her Majesty the Queen and Right of Canada as represented by the Minister responsible for Federal Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario and the Corporation of the Town of Petrolia to receive funding through the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, be read a third time and finally passed. And that bylaw number 29 of 2022, being a bylaw of the Corporation of the Town of Petrolia to execute a subdivision agreement between the Corporation of the Town of Petrolia and Spectra Construction Petrolia Inc. for the development of Greenwood Estates subdivision, be read a third time and finally passed. And that bylaw number 30 of 2022, being a bylaw of the Corporation of the Town of Petrolia to confirm the resolutions and motions of the Council of the Town of Petrolia, which were adopted up to and including June 13th, 2022, be read a third time and finally passed.
Any discussion regarding the bylaws from council? If not, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of approving those bylaws? That motion carries, and I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Sutch, seconded by Councillor Purdy. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the June 13th, 2022 meeting of the Council of the Town of Petrolia be adjourned to the next regular scheduled meeting of council to be held on Monday, June 27th, 2022, or to the call of the chair.
Any discussion as to the time? If not, all those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, everyone.